Welcome to our presentation. Alan and I worked together to create a unit on adding and subtracting fractions. First, I'll explain a little bit about the learners in this unit. This unit is designed to meet the needs of a 7th grade general education math class. This group is mostly Hispanic and bilingual. It's a mixed ability class, so they benefit from various learning styles and differentiated instruction to meet all their needs. These students love doing technology-based activities, especially on their Chromebook. However, they do benefit from structure within those activities. Also, just a side note, Alan teaches a 7th grade general education math class, and I teach a 6th grade special education math class. So we did include some modifications on ways to change this unit to also meet the needs of the 6th grade class later in the presentation. These are our unit objectives. I'll just kind of briefly touch on the main pieces of each one. You can feel free to read through them in full if you would like. We would hope that students will be able to add and subtract like fractions. We want students to be able to simplify fractions, and we want students to be able to add and subtract unlike fractions. After they have learned those three objectives, we would hope that they would be able to then apply all their skills to a fourth objective, and that is that they will be able to create, solve, and explain a real-world story problem. These are the Common Core standards that relate to our unit. I'm not going to read through them. You can feel free to read through them on your own, but there are 4 of them. Our main teaching strategy is the Madeline Hunter instructional theory. This is kind of your typical teaching model. You would start with some sort of learning outcome or objective that you want students to learn in the unit. And then to gain their attention and interest, you would start with an anticipatory set, something quick. Moving forward, you would choose a lesson objective for the day or days, depending on how long the lesson takes. Following that is where you as the teacher would provide the input. That's the instruction piece. So sometimes in our unit that's provided through videos, sometimes it's through guided notes, sometimes a combination of the two or other in-class activities. Throughout your input, you want to be checking in with your students for understanding, make sure they're gaining all the content and understanding the skills that you're teaching. Following that, students would have an opportunity for guided practice. So that means that they would still be working with you as the teacher or in a group or a partner to apply the skills that they have learned. And once you feel that has been mastered, you would want to provide them with an opportunity to individually practice the skills during an independent practice. Sometimes in our unit that's homework, sometimes it's a quiz, or sometimes other in-class activities. In addition to Madeline Hunter's instructional theory, our unit also relates to Gardner's multiple intelligences. We have so many different diverse students, so in order to meet all those needs, we've included different types of learning styles in our unit. We've used a number of different technology tools in this unit. However, our main tool is the virtual pattern block manipulatives. So those are virtual manipulatives that students can access through our school website or unit website to enhance their knowledge of fractions. So with that being said, we did use some other tools as well. We created a teacher website through Google that has all of our resources, homework assignments, videos, and syllabus. Students will also be making a presentation at the end of the unit through PowerPoint, Google Slides, or Prezi. They will get to choose whichever presentation platform they prefer. And students will be providing feedback on those presentations through Google Docs, and then they will be providing feedback to the instructor through a Google Form survey. Here is our day-to-day daily description of the unit. This is a 9-day unit, so I'll begin with day 1. I'm just going to touch on each of these briefly because it is a long unit. I'm going to skip through the homework, but you can feel free to read that as I go along through each day. So day 1, students will be introduced to the unit with a unit syllabus that will include homework and what to expect each day in class, as well as our website information. Then we'll start by exploring fractions with the virtual shapes, and students will fill in a worksheet as they use the online manipulatives. On day 2, students will add and subtract fractions with like denominators. That means the same denominators. So they will first watch a video and then they will work through a practice worksheet, and the teacher will float around during this time to check in with the students. Day 3, students will still be adding and subtracting fractions. However, they will also be simplifying now. So they will be adding and subtracting fractions with sums that are greater than 1. So in order to introduce this, they'll be going through a warm-up that will be an online game where they have to identify equivalent fractions. The game does allow students to work at their own pace. Following that, students will view some brief videos on how to find common denominators and equivalent fractions, simplifying, and the teacher will float around during this time to answer any questions. Students will then participate in a partner activity, applying the skills that they have learned from the videos, and then be able to discuss those skills and content with their peers. On day 4, we will move into finding common denominators. So students will be viewing a brief video, and then the teacher will circulate during the room during this time. Students will then complete an interactive practice on finding common denominators. The questions in this practice provide opportunities for feedback and then prompt the students to view videos and seek more information if they make mistakes. When students have completed this practice, they will then use the remaining time to play a game that relates to common denominators, and then again, they can kind of choose the difficulty level at this time. On day 5 of our unit, we'll move into adding and subtracting unlike fractions. It's a little bit of a continuation from day 4, so we won't spend a whole lot of instruction time here. So students will just do a brief review of material from the previous day, and then that feedback will really provide some information to the teacher if students need additional practice or not. Students will then work with a partner to play an online game about adding and subtracting unlike fractions, and following this, students will work in groups to solve real-world context problems. On day 6, students will be introduced to the small group project. So they'll first be showed a sample of what a completed project would look like to gain some interest and attention. Then students will be given a handout and a rubric that explains the project in detail. At this time, the teacher will, point out any of the key components and answer any questions students have. Then students will be splitting up into groups to work on the project. They will need to create, solve, and explain a real-world story problem that involves adding or subtracting unlike fractions, and they will choose the presentation platform of their choice, whether it's Google Slides, PowerPoint, Prezi. Let's see, day 7 will just be a work day continuing the project. On day 8, students will have an opportunity to view and solve their peers' projects. So they'll go through a carousel walk with their group. At this time, they will solve each of the problems. The Chromebooks or iPads will be set in presentation mode, making it easy and simple and fast for students to move around the room to get to each of the projects. On day 9, our last day of the unit, students will take a quiz on all of the content covered throughout our 9-day unit. And following that, they will complete a student opinion survey using Google Forms to provide the teacher with feedback on the design of the unit. As I said earlier in the unit, Alan teaches a 7th grade general education math class, and I teach a 6th grade special education math class. So in order to meet the needs of the kids in my class, or any lower group for that matter, we would want to extend the time frame of the unit and moving it from 9 to at least 15 days to allow time for reteaching and repetition of the skills. Students will also be able to use a calculator or multiplication chart to help with finding common denominators. And there will also be an opportunity for students to use dictation software for their presentation as opposed to typing. So this will address students with fine motor deficits and students who struggle with spelling. Some further differentiation options that have been included in our unit are that students are able to select the difficulty level in the fruit splat game that they play, and they're also able to select the speed. And for our advanced students, we would love to challenge them to be using larger fractions throughout this entire unit. This is an example of our first handout designed to use on day one with the virtual manipulatives. It's a front and back worksheet that students will go through and complete as they use the manipulatives on their Chromebook or iPad. This is our second handout. This is our unit syllabus that students will be given on day one. It lays out the description of what they can expect to happen each day as well as the homework, and it also includes our unit website. This is an example of the end of unit presentation project that we would show to students before they begin the project so they know what to expect. So I will play this video for you to view. Students create a story problem involving unlike denominator fractions. They come up with a solution. They include pictures, videos, and then they display the steps to solve that problem. This is our website that we created through Google to display all of our online digital content, so different resources, homework assignments, our syllabus, videos, and other practices. So feel free to copy and paste the link or click on the button to view our website. Our unit was an example of modification. So tech really allowed for significant task redesign in this unit. Instead of making a poster for the real world story problem, students are doing a presentation, so there's no space constraint. They're really able to incorporate as many components as needed without being limited to a size of a poster or piece of paper. In addition, viewing that presentation on presentation mode will allow students to participate all at the same time instead of waiting to hear one presentation at a time. It really allows for that discussion and collaboration piece for students to move around the room at one time and discuss each problem with their partner or small group. In addition, students will use Google Docs to provide feedback to their peers using that share feature or the suggesting feature. So again, that's really redesigning the task and allowing for more engagement. Speaking to summative evaluation, in order to evaluate student learning of content, we will look at different homework assignments, our checks for understanding throughout each lesson. We're going to provide opportunities for questions. The presentation that students design and the end of unit quiz will give the teacher information on how students are doing with the content being presented. In order to evaluate the effectiveness of the unit design, students will be completing an opinion survey on Google Forms, and also it will be based on the performance on their end of unit quiz. That's all for our presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.